I didn't hide my income because I was ashamed of it. I hid it because I was afraid of what it might replace. When people know you have money, they stop asking certain questions. They stop being curious in an honest way. They assume the answers. They rearrange themselves around you. I liked the quiet of being underestimated. I liked knowing that when someone chose me, it wasn't because I made their life easier. With him, it felt especially important. We lived simply. Small apartment, shared groceries, no flashy purchases. I said I worked remotely in consulting, which was true, just incomplete. I never lied outright. I just allowed the version of me that fit his expectations to exist uninterrupted. He never asked for more detail. That should have meant something. At the time, I told myself it meant trust. When he invited me to dinner with his parents, he sounded excited in a contained way, like someone presenting a formality rather than a milestone. I asked what they were like. He said they were traditional, practical. They'll like you, he added, without much thought behind it. I decided not to correct anything. Not my clothes, not my background, not the assumptions that had already begun forming in his parents' minds before they met me. I told myself it wasn't a test. That word sounded manipulative. I framed it as observation. I wanted to see the shape of their kindness without incentives. I wanted to know how a family that would one day be mine treated someone they believed had nothing to offer them. The house was large, but not loud about it. Muted colors. Symmetry. Everything chosen once and kept forever. The kind of wealth that announces itself through restraint. His mother opened the door and smiled in a way that paused halfway to warmth. Her eyes flicked to my shoes, then to my hands, then back to my face. It all happened quickly, but not invisibly. You must be exhausted from work, she said, already turning away. I nodded, as if that were true in the way she meant it. The dining room conversation settled into patterns almost immediately. His father asked him about his job. His mother asked him about a recent promotion. When I was included, it was with soft-edged questions that didn't require much depth. So what do you do again? Do you enjoy it? That must be flexible. Flexible meant expendable. We all knew it. They spoke about money without speaking about money, about discipline, about earning your place, about people who expect things too early in life. I ate slowly. I smiled when appropriate. I kept my posture relaxed, slightly inward, the way people do when they don't want to take up space. My fiancé noticed none of it, or noticed and didn't name it. He squeezed my knee once under the table, a gesture that felt more reassuring to himself than to me. At one point, his mother asked if I planned to keep working once things got more serious. The question was framed as concern. The implication was management. I'm not sure, I said. It wasn't even untrue. My work had always been portable. My independence, less so. There was a faint relief in her expression. I realized then that they weren't cruel. That would have been easier. They were corrective. They saw me as something to be adjusted, refined, made suitable, and in their minds they were being generous about it. What surprised me wasn't how they treated me. It was how quickly my presence became optional. Conversation flowed around me. Decisions were discussed without me. Future holidays were referenced abstractly, with a tone that suggested addition, not inclusion. I felt something tighten, not painfully, but clearly. This was what it looked like to be accepted conditionally, to be liked in advance of being useful. The shift came quietly. There was a knock at the door midway through dessert. His father stood, mildly annoyed. "That'll be the contractor," he said. I forgot he was stopping by. The man who entered was older, carrying a leather portfolio, dressed professionally but without display. He scanned the room politely, then his eyes landed on me. He stopped. For a fraction of a second, I considered pretending not to know him. It would have been easy. He was a client liaison I worked with occasionally on a long-term project. Not a close relationship, not someone who knew my personal life. But recognition crossed his face, followed by something else, respect sharpened by context. "Oh," he said, genuinely surprised. "I didn't realize you'd be here." His parents froze in that way people do when a script changes mid-scene. "Do you know each other?" his mother asked. "We've worked together," the man said, turning slightly toward me. "She leads one of the most complex portfolios we have. I was just telling my team last week how rare her strategic clarity is." He didn't say my income. He didn't need to. The silence that followed was not dramatic. It was instructional. His father straightened. His mother's expression recalibrated too quickly, landing somewhere just short of embarrassment. My fiancé looked at me, truly looked, as if seeing the outline of something he'd never bothered to fill in. "Oh," he said. Just that. The rest of the evening adjusted itself around this new information without acknowledgement. Chairs angled closer. Questions deepened. Interest sharpened. I answered politely, briefly. I didn't expand. I didn't correct the past hour retroactively. I watched how easily tone could be rewritten when authority appeared. How dignity was granted not because I had always deserved it, but because now it was legible. When we left, his mother hugged me longer than before. She told me she hoped I hadn't felt overlooked. The phrasing was careful, non-committal. In the car, my fiancé was quiet. I didn't know, he said eventually, not accusing, just unsettled. I know, I replied. He asked why I hadn't told him. I thought about all the explanations I could give, about fear, about love, about wanting to be chosen without leverage. I wanted to know who I was to you before money complicated it, I said. He nodded slowly. But something had already shifted, not because I had money, because I had withheld something fundamental, and he realized how comfortable he'd been not asking. We didn't argue that night, or the next. There was no explosion. Just a growing awareness that we had been standing on different versions of the same ground, assuming it was shared. Weeks later, we ended things quietly. No villain, no speech. Just an acknowledgement that what I needed to feel seen, he had never learned to look for. I still live simply. I still don't announce my worth in numbers. But I no longer pretend that being underestimated is harmless. Some people don't mistreat you because you lack value. They mistreat you because they haven't been taught to recognize it without proof. And some love you only as long as they don't have to rethink themselves.